The Buddha is said to have been born on April 15, 623 BC in the Lumbini garden about 15 kilometers away from the city of Kapilavastu, now part of the Ruminatehi region, Auth district, located in southwestern India and east of the Rapti. His father was King Suddhodana and his mother was Queen Maya. Belonging to the Sakya lineage, King Suddhodana ruled a kingdom adjacent to the majestic Himalayas, with its capital at Kapilavastu, now in Nepal, identified as Bulia in the Basti district, about 3 kilometers northwest of Bengal, near the Babuan railway station. During a Tintu festival in Kapilavastu, as the king and his court offered incense and worship, Queen Maya, after completing the rituals in the inner palace and distributing gifts to the people, retired to rest. In a dream, she saw the image of a white, six-ivory statue of a king emerging from nothingness, which took hold of her right hip and slid in. The soothsayers predicted that she would give birth to a talented and all-round prince. This news filled King Suddhodana with joy, for he believed that a successor to the throne had finally been found. According to the customs of that time, when the flowers bloomed, the queen was required to return to her father's home, her foster father Anjana, in the land of Koli, to recuperate and await her delivery. On the way, she passed by the Lumbini garden, where the flowers were in full bloom under the shade of an asoka tree, and from there she gave birth to the crown prince. The joyous news of the prince's birth quickly spread throughout the kingdom, filling everyone with happiness. On the day the crown prince was born, Kapilavastu was aglow with joy. The climate was cool, the trees lush, the streams clear, birds sang melodiously, and a radiant aura spread everywhere. The entire nation organized a celebration, gathering the people in the capital, Kapilavastu. Among the crowd were not only ordinary citizens, but also ascetics from the high mountains who came to attend the ceremony and read the omens for the prince. Notably, the ascetic Siddhattha, revered for his virtue and ascetic life in the Himalayas, came to pay homage to the crown prince with deep respect, smiling as he shed tears. He prophesied that the prince possessed 32 auspicious signs, indicating that he would eventually attain Buddhahood and, with a compassionate heart, spread the true Dharma to humanity, while expressing regret that his own age was too advanced to witness the prince's spiritual teaching firsthand. This prophecy left King Suddhodana thoughtful. During the naming ceremony, he chose the name Siddhattha and the surname Gautama, implying that this child would fully inherit and continue the throne. Only 7 days after his birth, Queen Maya passed away, and thus the care and upbringing of the crown prince was entrusted to her younger sister, Mahapabati. Crown Prince Siddhattha was raised in a comprehensive manner, receiving training in literature, martial arts, and various other subjects. Elite professors from the kingdom were invited to the royal palace to teach subjects such as language, literature, technology, medicine, philosophy, and religious studies, starting when he was just 7 years old. Between the ages of 7 and 12, the crown prince mastered these 5 disciplines, earning the respect of renowned masters like Santideva in martial arts and Visvamitra in literature. His intelligence and virtue only increased the affection people had for him. During a harvest festival, while everyone was busy celebrating, the young crown prince quietly stood by the rose apple tree, exuding a thoughtful and serene demeanor. Witnessing this scene, and recalling the first time he saw the ascetic Siddhattha bow before the crown prince, the king could not help but feel deep reverence. King Suddhodana exclaimed in surprise, "Oh, my beloved child! This time your father bows before you." Fearing that the crown prince might choose the path of renunciation instead of inheriting the throne, as foretold by Siddhattha, the king and his court arranged numerous plans to keep him within the palace. The king ordered the construction of 3 magnificent palaces, each suited to a different season, and selected hundreds of talented concubines to serve the crown prince. The Buddha once described this period of his life in the Tung Chi first scripture with grand imagery, yet these luxuries could not soothe the crown prince's yearning soul for liberation. After some time, with profound insight and boundless compassion, the crown prince began to perceive the sorrows and concerns of life. With his father's permission for the first time, he left the resplendent palace to contemplate the world outside. Within the confines of the walled city, he was only exposed to the superficial beauty of life. However, beyond those walls, heartbreaking scenes so contrary to the prosperity he had always known unfolded before his eyes, stirring his heart. Stepping out of the four gates of the city, he witnessed, one after another, the image of a weary old man, a suffering patient, a rotting corpse, and an ascetic exhibiting renunciation. These sights deeply moved the crown prince, making him realize that all worldly pleasures and prosperity were but transient and illusory. Along with a conversation with a free-spirited ascetic who hinted at the path to liberation, Crown Prince Siddhattha decided to abandon his luxurious life in favor of a more authentic and meaningful way of living, a path leading to enlightenment and the permanent cessation of suffering. In that very moment, disheartening news arrived that further saddened him. Princess Yasodhara had just given birth to a prince. The crown prince remarked that a bond has now been formed, a comment that prompted King Suddhodana to name the child Rahula. Burdened by the suffering of sentient beings, one night, after gazing one last time at the image of his beloved wife and child sleeping peacefully, the crown prince, together with his attendant Channa, led the chariot Kantaka out of the city. At that moment, he resolved to renounce everything, family, wealth, power, and a life of luxury, for a love of humanity that surpassed all else. This renunciation was not an act of weakness or helplessness, but rather the profound and noble sacrifice of a young prince who had lived in abundant luxury. His departure, unadorned and unceremonious, marked a historic turning point. At that time, the crown prince was only 19 years old. According to the Nam tradition, he renounced the world at the age of 29. Upon reaching the banks of the Anoma River, the crown prince paused, shaved off his hair and beard, and handed over his garments and jewelry to Channa, instructing him to return and inform his family. Thereafter, he set out on a solitary journey wearing the simple yellow robe of an ascetic, living a life of wandering, renunciation of worldly attachments, and detachment from sensual desires. Whether he sought shelter for the night beneath the shade of ancient trees, in secluded rocky caves, silent forests, or in a remote village, he persevered under the scorching sun and cold winds, carrying only a small bowl as his sole utensil for receiving his meals. Throughout that period, the crown prince devoted himself to meditation, earnestly seeking the ultimate truth. On his path of renunciation, many distinguished scholars had renounced worldly life to become renowned spiritual teachers, attracting a vast number of disciples. Crown Prince Siddhattha himself studied under the guidance of two esteemed masters, Alara Kalama and Udaka Ramaputta. In a short period, he attained high states of meditative absorption, such as the state of formless attainment achieved by Alara Kalama and the state of perception of nothingness attained by Udaka Ramaputta. However, realizing that all these states still resided within the cycle of samsara, he continued his spiritual journey and advised these teachers to persist in enlightening their disciples. According to Indian tradition, those on the path to liberation must undergo ascetic practices. The crown prince, along with 5 fellow ascetics, Kodana, Bhadya, Vapa, Mahanama, and Asaji, embarked on an ascetic journey that lasted 6 years. This process rendered his body as emaciated as a skeleton, with deep, sunken eyes and barely enough strength to move. He endured excruciating pain, as if being drilled through the skull, bound tightly with ropes, slashed by knives, or thrown into a furnace, vividly depicted in the Majjhima Nikaya. Yet these agonies did not shake his resolve. On the contrary, they spurred him further to realize that the path to ultimate liberation does not lie in external bodily practices, but must be actualized from within each person's heart. Thereafter, by drinking a bowl of milk offered by the village woman Sujata and bathing in the Neranjara river, he regained his strength. Believing that he had lost his resolve and returned to a life of sensual indulgence, his 5 ascetic companions abandoned him and departed for Isipana near the city of Benares. Alone, he approached the pipala tree, later known as the Bodhi tree, and with a serene mind, mindfulness, and awakened awareness, detached from desire, he entered a state of meditation. Step by step, he progressed through successive levels of meditation, from preliminary meditation to second, third, and fourth meditations, and then directed his focus toward the state of triple insight. With acute intuition, he discerned that the cause of suffering arises from the dependent origination of the 12 links, the root of all afflictions. Initially, he attained the state of Tukmet Min, gaining insight into his countless past lives. Thereafter, with Tianan Min, he clearly perceived the law of cause and effect among sentient beings. Next, through deep contemplation, he fully understood the nature of suffering, its causes, its cessation, and the path leading to liberation, thus attaining final insight. Finally, he achieved the fruit of supreme perfect enlightenment, becoming the first Buddha of his era and coming to be known as the Buddha Gautama, or Buddha Shakyamuni. Looking back through history, no matter how many heroes have achieved glorious victories on the battlefield, who can truly conquer their own desires? Conquering others is difficult enough, but overcoming oneself is the greatest challenge of all. The Buddha transcended both external and internal defilements, ending all base desires, an achievement that merits him being celebrated as a great hero, a mighty force. He did not fight for personal gain or solely for the sake of familial love, but out of boundless compassion for all sentient beings, seeking the path of liberation for humanity. For this reason, he is extolled with the titles of great compassion and great loving kindness. With vast, non-attached love, he renounced the palace, wealth, power, and an extravagant worldly life, choosing instead a life of asceticism and austerity to teach and save sentient beings. This has earned him the honorifics of great joy and great release. Even a brief overview of the life of this great teacher is enough to convey the profound significance that explains why humanity has always revered him as the great hero, the mighty force, the embodiment of great compassion, great loving kindness, great joy, and great release. The appearance of Shakyamuni Buddha in the world was not only a tremendous honor for humanity, but also an embodiment of wisdom, courage, and boundless love. He is the personification of the liberating truth, bringing auspicious signs to all sentient beings across the globe. Had life not been imbued with suffering, perhaps the Buddha would never have appeared, for he was born with the profound purpose of enabling sentient beings to realize and attain their own Buddha nature. In other words, he came into being for the happiness and peace of all sentient beings, of all deities, and of all humanity. The life of the Buddha is an inspiring sermon, the sacred meaning of which cannot be fully expressed in tens of thousands of words. His life stands as a living testimony to his teachings. His words and actions have become tangible evidence, transcending time and space, of the liberating truth. The history of the Buddha is the story of a person who, through diligent practice and self-discipline, became perfected and rose to become a saint among men. The greatest person ever born in this world, as Tagore once said. Through his life and the teachings recorded in the Tripitaka, the Buddha demonstrated that anyone, through their own efforts, can ascend to the pinnacle of enlightenment and attain liberation. It can be said that no other religion or ideology places the human being at its center and upholds the value of humanity as much as Buddhism does. We can choose to steer clear of all evil, perform virtuous deeds, and purify our inner selves, so that each of us may become a complete individual in virtue and wisdom, fulfilling the timeless message that the Buddha has bequeathed to humanity.